Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Back for another episode of the Draxx Life podcast, where we'll chat about some of the weird and the wondrous. Let's get to the show.
All right, go.
All right, here we go, man. We're live. Yo, what's up? How you been?
I've been good. Been good. Standard week. Glad it's Friday. Nothing really major to report other than I try to watch. I guess you heard the chatter last night because we have the group chat where me and Joe were going back and forth a little bit, arguing about. Remember when Joe cried in the at
I love how you're just throwing him under the bus.
Yeah, no, I mean he knows.
this
him.
like decade ago event.
Yeah, he cried when the Giants won the Super Bowl, and I'm trying to convince him that there's a player, for anyone who doesn't know, Eli Manning was the quarterback of that, and he gave us those moments, and Joe is trying to kind of like chop him down and saying he wasn't that good. Come on, man, what are you doing? You were crying on New York 1. So shut up.
I remember that. Dude, it's so heartwarming because it's like, you know, Joe is a true blue.
He's a big time Giants
New
fan.
York fan, exactly. Yeah. And it's like, dude, I get it. Like we've had so for those of you listening, like I've taken the time to move a lot of these episodes we've recorded over many years and put them all on YouTube. So I got a chance to kind of like, you know, pick through some of them and listen to some of the things. And it's funny, we did a couple sports episodes, and I'm not a sports fan, as anyone who's listened to these other episodes would know, but like I've had a chance to kind of like learn about sports from two guys who are like diehard sports fans, like different sports. You know, Bobby A is the soccer hockey fanatic, whereas Haitian Wanderer Joseph Mark is like a diehard football fan. But like I have learned to appreciate those cultures, right? Because you have people like Joseph Mark who are so emotionally involved in like a positive way. Like they get through like the ups and downs of their life via these teams' successes and failures and overcoming obstacles, where like I walk away and I'm like, I might not watch the sport, but like I value that it exists, and I value, like, I see and understand why people like are in love with it and want to give up their time.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said. He's more into, he likes baseball. He's a Yankees Giants guy. And I'm, like you said, I have a more global perspective on athletics.
Correct. And now I've gotten you over into the UFC, so it's
just even more so.
Correct.
Even more so. Correct.
So bringing up the subject, like I kind of mentioned this to you earlier, like, so I got a chance to go back into the vault and move some of these old episodes that we had recorded in the past through like a variety of, like, we recorded episodes through COVID and more recently, but like, dude, it's been almost 5 years where we've been like on again, off again, recording these things. And I thought something we could kind of like start with today. And as you guys know, who have listened in the past, we engage in conversational parkour. We start in one place, we end in a different place. So I thought we could start in here and then hit a couple other topics. But like, just wanted to like do a look back, right? Like, dude, almost 5 years, and like that's a long time. Like,
it is.
You know, how have you changed? How have I changed in that time period? How's the world changed? And maybe we can kind of do like a slight short retrospective. So yeah, I wanted to kind of start there. Yeah, almost 5 years since we first started kind of on again, off again recording. So yeah, man, like, I don't know, how have you changed in almost 5 years? Like, we're almost at 40, and like we started early 30s. And then we hit COVID like pretty much at the very beginning.
Which changed everyone.
Changed.
Yeah. You sounded like Anthony Hopkins there in Westworld. Remember that monologue he goes on in the dinner where he's like, I've developed a new retrospective.
Yes,
I'm not the sentimental type. In his face, Anthony Hopkins is the man. He's one of the only actors that doesn't have to do anything physically. He just by his facial expressions, he could convey so much.
Dude, man, he's a master of like
masterful
film acting, right? Like just with like a tick of his eye,
Yeah.
a slight move of his jaw, a twinkle of his eye. It's like he can convey so much. I mean, that's like an amazing skill.
Yeah.
But yeah, go
Yes.
ahead, go ahead.
To answer your question, uh, which is actually a good segue because in that monologue he talks about how he despises corporations and money and how they're affecting the artists that work. So over the last 5 years, that's something that I know some. It might sound trite, but uh, in the sporting arena, there's so much money involved that it's become kind of like a, I don't know, it's like a playground for billionaires. You can see what I'm saying? Like it's
Yeah.
no one's interested in winning titles anymore. All they want to do is manipulate the fan base, milk everyone for more money and more money and more money and more money. And the same thing with the players. The players all want to be celebrities and they want to have reality shows and their clothing brand, and they're raising their profile, and they have social media shit. So over the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of that, and it's changed the dynamic. And it's just, I'm going to get away from sports now, but it's changed the dynamic of society in general, and we've become, I think, a society that's, I think we've gotten more materialistic. We've gotten even more superficial, at least in America, from what I've seen. And I'm interested to know how you feel about that, because I think in America we've, what's the way to say it? We were towing the line before, but now, especially the things we talked about in the prior episodes with the adult attainment in industry
Yeah.
and all this other shit, we've gotten to a point where I think this younger generation is going to have some serious issues. But go ahead. So, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of I agree. I don't know if we were talking about this in a previous episode about the sports, or if this was
Yeah.
something you and I were just kind of, maybe it was like a random voice message I had left. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Definitely with the, well, okay, let's hit it from a couple different perspectives. Let's talk first about the sports. I'm not a sports fan. I just mentioned that, but
Right,
I
right.
was reading, and I'll read you and Joe talking about this because you guys are both not only sports fans, but I think you guys really kind of study like it as a business. Like you guys kind of can name who the owner is, decision making, things that
Yeah,
they're
we go
doing.
under the hood. We go under
Correct,
the hood.
exactly. Which I don't think everyone who does, who's like kind of a sports fan, even people who are like serious sports fans. I think one thing that's changed, and I think, like you just said, is like sports is the veneer that it's not entertainment has kind of been broken, right? I think for a long time, and maybe this is just me just talking out of my ass a little bit, but I think like historically there were athletes, right? And yes, it was entertainment, people made money, but like at the core it was like athletic endeavor, it was competition. The people who were participating were, like, to use an old-fashioned term, like they were sportsmen, right? Like they
It's
cared
true.
about being victorious, they cared about winning, they cared about the competition, like the purity of the game, and they also got paid, right? So like, but the being paid as an athlete was, I don't want to say secondary, but it was slightly secondary. Whereas now I think it's like sports is, it's always been an part of the entertainment business, but I think it's like it's lost its a little bit of that veneer where like now people just know it's the entertainment business, and like
Yeah.
it's like a money grab. And I think you've said it, like when you go to sporting events now, the cost, like baseball games, and I can't name prices, but like I've heard, right, like it used to be that like a guy who was a plumber could take his kids to like a football
I was
game
just
or
gonna
to
say
like
that the
a
union guys.
yeah, to
Yeah.
a baseball game. Like it was supposed to be like entertainment for the masses. And I think now, like you can see that that has changed, where like due to things I'm not even aware of, like it's become unaffordable, right? It's become kind of like this like upper echelon activity. And again, it's like going to a concert, right? It's become
It's
something that's it's entertainment. It's a different type of entertainment.
yeah.
Which I think, like, historically, the 1940s, like, athletes were stars, but it was different. Like, they were athletes. They were like rough kind of and tumble men who played a sport, and they were like sportsmen, and they got paid for a living. They did well, but like now, they're not much different than like a Hollywood actor, right? They just do a different activity, but in a way, it's kind of the same. It's like, you know, two sides of the same coin.
Yeah, correct. I was you just took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say it's become sports has become like a superhero movie now. It has become Hollywood. That's what it
Yeah,
is. No one. It doesn't matter who wins. All that matters is we make a shitload of money at the box office.
yeah,
Literally, it is a box office now. We
yeah,
make a that's for the ownership, and then for the participants, it's about becoming famous, raising your profile, creating your brand, getting your name out there, and
yep.
then becoming. So it's the
And
same.
and
Go
dude,
ahead.
and part of it is like I can't even knock it to a degree, right? Because like historically, right, the people who owned the entertainment business, so like the teams, the stadiums, there wasn't a time in history where they weren't making a lot of money, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, from that perspective, these people were like, the athletes were like gladiators, right? That like
Mm-hmm.
got a little fame, made a living, but like there were people making a lot of money off of them. And I think, now in the age of social media and the greater ease, not even social media, but branding and things like that prior to social media, like the athletes, I think, started to see like, hey, like, why am I allowing you, owner or brand, whatever sports team, to
That I
take
agree
all
with.
of
This
this
is a good point.
money off of me and what I've done? So now I'm going to get mine, right? And I think there was a shift, like the Michael Jordan, right?
Correct. Yeah,
Where
yeah.
athletes started to kind of make their own wealth, which I can't, like, that makes sense. Like, why should, right? Like, you know what I mean? It's like, you're making all this money off my name and what I can do. Shouldn't I, right? Like, I should be the one making the money. So I think that, like, that was like the natural evolution, but I don't know, something kind of, it went even a little step further than that.
Right. No, that's a great point, and that part I want to clarify. That part I'm not against. I'm not against athletes who are actually doing all the training, all the performing to get their piece of the pie.
Yeah.
Basically, they need as much as the ownership is getting. Right. At that part, I get. But what I don't like is the focus has become more about maximizing profits and monetizing your own content. That's what I don't like. I know,
Yeah.
like, the individual. That's why I like UFC, because UFC is always about winning the fight, or and they want the title bout, and or retaining or winning the title. That's
Okay.
why that's more pure to me. Like the word you used earlier, that's more pure to me. But in terms of all these, it's only really relevant in America, because in all around the world, South America, Central America, Caribbean, Europe, Africa, there's still fan bases that hold everyone accountable, because the fans in those parts of the world are, it's more of a club mentality. You understand what I'm saying, Chris? That
Yeah.
there's
Hmm.
it's not, I'm just gonna sit down in a chair and I demand that you please me with entertainment. What Go watch in a Brazil versus Argentina soccer match, and you see how the fans are part of the game. They're singing for 90 minutes. No one's sitting down. They're standing, singing, playing instruments for 90 full minutes. Africa's the same thing. Europe, Germany, look at the German Bundesliga. It's a different just perspective, but in America is, I'm going to sit down, pay $5,000 for a ticket, and I demand that you please me, which is a little different. So
Yeah, I mean, to kind of expand it out of sports, I mean, I do think that I mean, what you're describing, how do I think it was like you often a theme maybe that's made itself into this podcast, but also just like through conversations and our group chats.
Mm-hmm.
Like for you, you see, and I think Joseph is like if you're the angel and the devil, right? Joseph is always kind of trying to like he's going to be contrarian to everything. Like anything negative, he's going to find the positive side. That tends to be often a Joe thing.
What do you think of toxic positivity? That was
there you go. I like
that's
that.
what I'm called. It's too much. He goes too much.
Correct. But hey, I mean, it's like you guys are a counterbalance to each other. Oh, funny enough. But what was I going to say? I just lost my train of thought.
I'm sorry. That's probably my fault.
No. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Go ahead.
So you're talking about yeah. So our friend who's I guess we can call him a co-host. He'll be back at some point.
If we can fit into his busy schedule.
Oh yeah. I was going to say something, but I nipped it right there.
No, but I guess what I was trying to think. What I was going to say was like this whole idea. Oh, the art. That's what I was going to say. Okay. Like you guys, a common theme or something that you always complain about is just like that. Like a lot of content is not valuable anymore. Like films,
it's true.
TV shows, and like how we started this episode, kind of even sports,
yeah.
Right? Like the purity, to use that word, is kind of is absent. Like you know what I mean? Like where it's almost like, and maybe this is kind of like
it's like manufactured dross. There's no creativity or art. There's no unique. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing unique anymore.
Well, yeah. So like, and again, maybe that is like maybe every generation looks at like another generation's content in that way, or maybe there's actually something has changed. Like, it would appear that like movies and TV shows that there were things made like when we were younger that were made just because like someone thought it would be very good, and like you hope that thing would also make money, but like like the value was kind of inherently in the content itself, right? Like indie films, like when we grew up, like there was like a heyday of indie films. Like you could go to the movies,
so many.
Right, and you could see these movies that are like indie, like they would be played in maybe a handful of theaters, and like someone somehow raised the capital to make like an interesting movie that like will never make millions and hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. Like it was just they made it because they wanted to make it, right? Where, you know what I mean? I don't even know if like that is like a thing anymore, right? Because I do think fame has been elevated significantly in like the last 15 to 20 years. So people who have always desired to be famous, but I think because the ability, the tools to become famous are more accessible, that like that's become more of the goal, if that makes sense, right? So like kind of like with the athletes, like self-promotion, your brand, where I think that's people's desire. It's not about like trying to make like the next great, book. It's like, well, what can I make what book can I write on what subject that I know will become like a bestseller, will get on this book list or that book list or this book list, etc. It's like more formulaic. Like, and I think we've talked about this before.
Exactly.
Like with studios, right? It's like what formula will make us the most money, and that's the movie we're going to make. Even if like inherently that is like a dumb premise, like Gladiator. Like I was thinking about this the other day, like Gladiator. They're definitely made that movie because they knew, like they've already done the math. It's not a question of if it's going to make money. Like it will make money. And like that's become like the main decision maker of if something gets made or not. Which I get, right? Because like you're going to make a film, especially a film like that. You have to lay out all of this money ahead of time. Like you better bet that the money that it's going to be, it's going to recoup that value.
Yeah.
But like that's become, and maybe that's always been the case, but that's like it seems to be the driving thing, right? You were going to bring this up before, like the Snow White movie. Like that was a formula, right? All right, we're going to make a Snow White movie. We're gonna make these tweaks.
It's
right?
ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
It's gonna be like a Latina girl. We're gonna hit these woke topics or whatever.
It's like a box checker. It's like checking boxes. That's
Correct.
it.
And like some would say, oh, it's because they're trying to be, like woke or progressive. It's like I don't think so. I think someone just does
Yeah,
the
you're
math
right.
and is like, these topics
That's right.
equal viewers. So if we have the right combination,
Bingo.
this formula, then ideally we're gonna make this much money,
Right. No. I think that's it's such a good point,
right?
because I don't think I'm not coming after the wokeness part about it. No, that's I get what they're trying to do. They're doing it from a strategic and a financial part
Yeah, it's
side,
like a
right? It's
capitalistic way to make a
yeah,
movie, which
yeah.
I'm a capitalist, but like filmmaking is an artistic endeavor to a degree, but I think we're leaning more into like, what financial variables do we can add together, and we know it's going to make money. The video, the content will be horrible, but we know that enough people will go there and pay money to at least see it. We don't care if they leave it liking it. We just care that they
Right.
paid money to sit down and watch it.
Uh-huh. You know what I'm gonna say right now. What am I gonna say? When you want to find the answers, what do, Chris?
Oh, you got to follow the money.
You follow the money. And that's it. That's it. It's not about the diversity. Yes, that's an element of it, correct? But you nailed it. I couldn't have said it better. So we could, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even have anything to add. That's right.
What about you though? What has changed in like from your perspective in the last 5 years? Like not even like your circumstances, but just like how you view yourself, how you view the world around you, things like that.
Well, so that's a good
I mean,
question.
what's your
There's two things that have
opening to talk
happened.
about?
Two things that have happened. I've done mushrooms and I've done DMT ayahuasca. Changed everything. All right, and this.
And maybe this will be it. Maybe we'll have a more drawn out episode.
We should do a full episode about this, because I don't think I could say everything I want in this, because there's another topic I want to talk about. We'll get there, but that over the last 5 years, so we started this right when the pandemic was starting, and we kind of called a lot of things. I'm not calling us, oh, we're the smartest people in the world, and we're like
Far from
it's or Bob Stradamus. I'm not calling myself that, but if you listen to those beginning episodes, we called a lot of what was going to happen. All right, it's fit easily. Go back and listen to those first few episodes.
Yeah, I think the first I was re-listening to some of them. Yeah, the first 2 episodes we were pretty much, because we were both in New York, and yeah, it was like we were at the very, let's say, like 2 to 3 week, like the rumblings were there in the first episode. By the second episode, we were talking about like, the potential, the idea of a lockdown, and by the third episode, like it was locked down. So yeah, we were already talking about that.
It was crazy.
A good month before it really happened.
Yeah. And then, speaking of Joe, I told the story of when Joe and I in the taxi cab and central booking and all that. That's one of the best. If anyone wants that 20-minute clip, it's one of the funniest things ever. That story is, people use the word legendary too frequently, and it's lost its panache a little bit, but that story is legendary. That's a legendary story. But anyway, back to what I was saying. So when I did all these psychedelics, it did two things to me. One, it showed me who I really was and what was holding me back in a psychological, mental way my entire life. And the good thing about the mushrooms and DMT is these are not substances that make you want to do more. It's not meth, it's not heroin, it's not cocaine, it's not something, oh, I need more and I need more and more, and then all of a sudden you're addicted and then your life starts spiraling, right? You do mushrooms, it doesn't make you want to do more mushrooms, it makes you just evaluate your life. So those two things changed over the last 5 years, and then I realized that one, one of the things that was holding me back was how I allowed everyone's perception of me. I think I touched upon this in the first one of this new rebrand. How everyone's perception of me and what they wanted me to do dictated my actions and my decision making. So you have to go to this school and you have to get this degree and you have to have this profession, or even in a friend way, you have to behave this way and you have to do this. You see what I'm saying? And I would allow that to dictate my own behavior. But then once past the psychedelic stage, now I'm going to do what makes me happy, and I'm going to do what I want to do. I don't give a shit what anyone else thinks. It doesn't matter anymore to me, because I had that ego. The ego was demolished after I went through those two experiences. So, which was very important. That's like a marker. If you want to put a marker on someone's life, that's why I said we're not going to have a midlife crisis. It's a midlife renaissance. That's what's going to happen. That's going to be my mantra for the next 10 years. But it is a shame that it took so long for me to realize that. But psychedelics did help me get through that, because that was anchoring me for a long time. And the second thing is a little more spiritual. The second thing it did was I realized that there's nothing final about death. We're all eternal. We're all part of this one living being that is the universe. I know you have your issues with that, but I realized that
go ahead, keep going.
No one should fear death, because there's nothing final about it. It's just a transition into a different form. So once that sinks in, once that really registers with you, you realize that you live every moment better, and it's such a feeling of liberation. It's the right word. But yeah, those two things. So over the last 5 years, since episode 1 to now, those are probably the two stark moments. I realized what was my biggest anchor, and I realized the future is nothing to be scared about.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Did I cut you off?
No. I'm done. You can now. What about you? Same question for you.
So, well, two things. I want to kind of respond to some of the things.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, the one was like your comment on psychedelics and the destruction of ego. Like we talked about this. There's at least 2 episodes. If you look at the backlog of there's psychedelics 1 and psychedelics part 2. We're different. We talk about different experiences, and I think that's to me that's one of the more beneficial is not the right word, but like that idea that you do. I experience
like a healthy effect.
The destruction of like your ego, and it's kind of interesting. Like, I watch UFC, like, and you'll all kind of the way you guys are fanboys about some of these different athletes at different sports. Like I do, like I will go watch videos of different fighters talking, and it is interesting. Like part of their personality, and for a lot of them, is the ego. Like it is the tool that they lean on. But sometimes you can see that like it almost becomes too big, where they're like delusional, right? Like someone gets beat, and then like afterwards, their ego is just so large that like they can't even admit the defeat. Like literally their mind is rewriting like the events of 48 hours ago. And like that's kind of that's it can be a very dangerous. So like I did find like I've experienced it when I did mushrooms a couple times, like in large quantity, that feeling of like having that take like gone, like what that feels like for it to be no more. Because you go through your whole life, everyone has the ego, like it's there, it manifests whatever it is, and like that's been the only experience I ever had where you kind of do like an internal audit and you're like, oh, that's gone. And it is good because it you know what I mean, like the ego kind of like separates you from people. And speaking for myself, right, because that's the only person I can speak for. When I did mushrooms, like the ultimate connection to people stood out. Like that thing is always there, but maybe it's the ego that kind of like gets in the way. And at least when I did mushrooms, like you felt ultimately like connected to all these people in your life, like friends and family, etc. And I,
Yeah.
it's interesting with mushrooms or with I would imagine many psychedelics, how quickly that once it begins to fizzle out, how that can kind of like your lessons from that experience kind of begin to fade away. It's almost as if like the ego is just like eradicating all of those lessons because it can kind of like the ego wants to survive and grow. But yeah, so I think that definitely resonates with me. And the other big thing, the other takeaway from what you said was like the idea of like not allowing other people to like direct you or to allow what they want for you to be more important than what you want for yourself.
Yeah, correct. And also the constant dwelling on what other people think about you, even
Yeah.
though they might not even care. They might not even be thinking about you, but there is that little voice in the back of my
Mhm.
head that would say, "Oh, what does Chris Corvo think of this?" Not,
Right.
I'm not calling you out
No,
as
no,
you
no.
never,
I got
you
it.
know what I
I
mean.
got it. I got it.
And if there was like a voice of like, what does this person think about me now? What if that, and then it just, you just go, it's, you just go into the abyss, James
Yeah.
Cameron abyss, going down. I'm going down like Ed
I
Harris.
saw that not that long ago too.
It's a great movie.
Great movie, great movie, great
Yeah.
movie.
Uh,
No, but I mean, I get it. I think that's like not an uncommon thing. I think
yeah,
that's a
that's
lot of people. A lot of us, like you think about what other people are thinking about you, or you run these monologues, these scenarios in
you're
your
right. You
head.
create
You know,
unnecessary, like, exactly.
correct stress. Like
Yeah.
it's like when you walk past someone and you think that they're thinking something about you,
That's right.
and
That's
then
right.
that whole spirals into a whole internal monologue like a movie. And it's like in reality, more often than not, everyone is worrying about their own selves.
Uh huh.
Like, you know what I mean? Most of our bandwidth is not focused on the people around us. It's focused on our own insecurities.
Yeah,
But
no, that's a good point, because another friend of mine, I like her, she's cool, she's a good friend of mine, and she said the same thing. She said almost to a T what you said. She said, people are worried about themselves so much. Why would you sit around, like, think about the things you think about right before you're falling asleep? You're in bed,
mhm,
everything's set up. Why would you be thinking about what someone else thinks of you? And she said, these people are thinking about themselves. Don't worry
cor-
about it. Yeah.
correct,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. But I think that feeling. I think it's what you described is like a very human. I think it's like something most people deal with.
Hmm.
Um, but I think there's a lot of value in like what you said. It just resonates with me because I kind of to some degree I agree in that like you know I do disagree in that like you should do whatever feels right because I think that can lead to like which we'll talk about later. That can lead
Hedonistic.
that can lead to some dark arts and some dark paths.
Yeah.
But I think the idea of like
I
you
think
know
everyone needs a little hedonism in their life, though, Chris. Come on.
may
Maybe.
in moderation maybe. um but again I guess my point though is like yeah I mean I at the end of the day like if you allow people to make choices for you whether they're like you're allowing that to happen in the long run like you deal with the consequences of those choices not them, right?
Uh huh.
So like if I can't blame them later for like the consequence of a choice they wanted me to do, because you can't say hey mom or dad like you wanted me to do this, it's not working and now it's your fault. They're going to say you're an adult, like why did you know what I mean? So it's kind of like you have to make
Correct.
your own choices, you have
Yes.
to do what
Yes.
seems right and be wise about it. I'm not saying like follow your bliss if that bliss leads you to like wanting to like do something horrible. But again, it's like yeah, you're an adult, like you have to make choices for yourself because you know you're the one that's going to have to live with those choices, right? And like since you're the only one that you can blame for a choice you make, then those choices better be choices that you really want to make. um
Mm-hmm.
Not, you know what I mean? So like I agree with that, but for me to answer the same question, looking back, it's funny like listening to some of these episodes we did like 5 years ago. One is like in the last 5 years for me, like so we were in New York when we started recording. You eventually were in Florida. I eventually moved to New Jersey, so like we've been moving. Like for me, one thing I definitely would say is like I have definitely become like much more like spiritual. Like I look back at some of the things I was saying in earlier episodes, and I'm like, dude, that's stupid. Like I would be slightly embarrassed if like someone listened to those things and tried to judge me now based on certain things I said.
Yeah, yeah.
So like I would say like my religious beliefs have definitely like increased in that time period. Um, the other thing though, I think is very similar
Wait, can
to
we can we
yeah.
can we unpack that a little bit more?
Well, we can, and also if you
Yeah.
want to hold off till we start talking
Yeah.
about
All
because
right.
it kind of will
Fair.
tie together a little bit.
Uh,
Um, the other thing is, yeah, we can definitely talk about it. I'm
yeah.
not nothing's off the topic. The other thing is like I kind of agree with you. I think for me, and I think maybe it's age, like when I was younger, we've talked about this in other episodes. Like, I think I wasted a lot of time from my perspective. Like, I think I, was either lazy or like didn't make moves. And like now for me, I think we talked about this like with COVID and things like that. I think I was talking to someone else too. Like, I feel time is like slipping away. And in the grand scheme of things, like we're still very relatively young. Like, but again, like I feel like like if I want to make moves, if there's certain things I want, they're not going to magically appear. Like, and I think that's maybe our generation was kind of raised that way a little bit. That like, good things are going to happen to you, kind of like magically. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean? Like life is going to work out. And I think for me, at least, it was like a realization that like there's certain things I want and I need to go like seek them out and acquire them because they're not going to like appear of their own volition. Like there's no magic that's going to make them happen. Like if you want things, whatever those things are, you want to like find someone, you want to like start a business, you want to get in shape, you want to move to a different place, like you need to go like giddy up and go and like make them happen. Otherwise, you're going to look back depending on your personality and have regrets. And again, like you can't judge anyone else. Like you can't say, well, I don't have these things because, I follow this person's advice. It's like at the end of the day, it's you're an adult. Like
Yeah, true.
you got to do that. If that's what you want, you can't blame anyone else. So I think for me, that's been kind of like maybe call it a kick in the pants.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
I had a positive effect.
Yeah, no, that is I do agree partially, but I disagree a little bit.
Go ahead.
I think the younger generations, although they do have I would say generally speaking, they have more of a go-getter mentality. Like you're saying, you got to make shit happen for yourself.
Yeah.
Whereas our generation is more go to a good high school, go to a good college, get a good job, start a family, get the white picket fence with the nice painted house, and then that's life. But where the younger generation, where I do give them credit, is they dashed all that. They dashed like the American dream, quote unquote. But I disagree with the way they're attaining it because they're doing some wild things to attain it. You see what I'm saying?
Okay, yeah. So I don't know where you're. Yeah, because this kind of ties into what we were talking about a little bit last week. I think. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I get. I think you could say that. Also, I think there's the point of like the person who speaks the loudest is the one that gets the most attention. So I don't know how many people are doing X, Y, Z, but they're the ones you're gonna see. So for example, it's like the person is doing like a crazy. I don't know. Give me an example. Like crazy YouTube videos.
Yeah, like there's a guy he's kind of a major soccer fan. His name, I don't even want to give him any pub, but I'm not going to say his name.
I won't know who he is, so
I'm not going to say his name. It doesn't matter. So yeah, exactly. But he does these all he built an entire financial empire on just doing crazy shit while he's playing a FIFA video game. And then he's like but he acts like psychotic and sociopathic, basically.
Yeah.
And you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's all online and virtual, and he's playing the video game. And now he's gotten to the point where he's playing in matches. He's getting flown around the world playing in matches, in like charity matches. He's not playing in the actual pro game because he's not good enough, but he's
Yeah.
playing in like the charity events because all these teenagers and middle schoolers are following him. So he has like 20 million followers on each platform. So in a total, he probably has like 100 to 150 million followers across all of his social media platforms, and it's just him doing wild, like crazy shit, just playing the video game, just playing the FIFA video game.
Yeah,
And it's weird. It's to see like shit like that. I'm it's bizarre to me, but it's working for him because he's only in his early 20s and he's globally famous and wealthy beyond his wildest dreams.
well, I think we can shift this now, because I think this is a good pivot point in that, right? We were both kind of talking about previously, a little bit before this episode started, like with what's going on with like P Diddy and like fame and like the cost of fame. Because I think you're kind of making a distinction, right? It's like, what it's like, kind of like your integrity level. It's like, what are you willing to do? This kind of ties into what we talked about last week, like to become famous or to become wealthy. And in some cases, like, the famous is like, people will do a lot more to be famous just for the sake of fame. And like, is there a point of which you cross like a moral line? Like, I would say yes, right? Like, if someone told you, it's like the example you gave last week, like someone told this influencer, one of their
Yeah,
advisors, if you go do OnlyFans,
you'll be a millionaire. Yeah.
you'll be a multimillionaire. Almost like, and I would imagine it was kind of like a guarantee thing, like, this will happen. And they said no, right? Because for whatever reason, I don't know this person, but for whatever reason, that crossed a line. I'm assuming now, because I don't know this person, but like maybe a moral line of like what they're unwilling to do. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just
I
like
know her, and I can tell you she's a good person. So
right. So like,
so it is. You're right. You're hitting the nail on the head.
right. Or like, how many people are willing to sleep with someone in order to get a role in a film? There's a lot of people that
True.
are willing to do that. They
Mm-hmm.
do the mental math, and the outcome of that is worthwhile to them, even if it's something they don't particularly want to do. And that's men and women. There are males who are not gay and would engage in a gay encounter if it was going to get them a Hollywood film. Like, we have these Hollywood stories. Like,
It happens all the time. It happens so often.
they do the math. They're like, yeah, it's worth, that's what I want. So like, I'll deal with this, or I don't care either way, in order to get me to my goal. Right. So now it's like, it becomes a moral question. And again, like, it kind of talks about, your idea of, death and outcomes, and, what is worth you, like, what is the value of moral integrity, right? Is it just like something that makes you feel good, or is there more to it than that, right? If it's just like, you know what I mean? Like, if it has no, if it's just like a philosophical idea, then why, if someone said, hey, if you cross this line, I'm going to pay you $100 million, you'll never have to work again. Like, you know what I mean? Then why would you stick to your moral integrity? Right?
Yeah, I know. It's such a hard
It's
question,
more
Chris.
than a philosophy, because, like, practically speaking, you could do a lot of good with that $100 million.
That's what I'm saying. That's why that's a good point. It's such a hard question to answer.
So when we talk about this whole P Diddy thing, and like, and I think what you're seeing now, which kind of ties into like, we're kind of almost going full circle, like entertainment, like, I don't think this stuff is new. I just think because of like the technological world we live in, things just have more light on them. Like, I was listening to like the Cat Williams interview with some guy, and he was like,
Shannon Sharp. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, like 2024, like all like the light will put.
He was right. He was right. He was like the truth.
The light will shine on all the darkness, right? The truth is going to come out.
Correct.
And like, in his case, he is religious. Like, that's like a religious kind of statement that, like,
that Cat
truth
Williams is making. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, because in that
I
interview
think he is. I
he's
think both of them are. I think
yeah,
both of them.
but like darkness survives, or I should say, like all
You're,
that
it's the
it
True Detective
it
line.
correct, it hides in the darkness, right? But when you start to shine lights on it, things
It-
start to
I,
they're gonna have to, like, when they see the light of day,
I
there's consequences. Go ahead, sorry,
I think the
I'm
lights.
rambling.
No, you're not rambling. I think the light's winning. That's what you're saying.
Oh
That's what
yeah,
you're
I mean,
saying.
he's
Yeah,
you see all those stars up
That's it.
there?
I think the light's winning. What a
You gotta
line! What that's the
you
last
gotta
line
listen
of
to
the
our True
series.
Detective episode.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, yeah. So I think it's just that you're seeing, like, a lot of this. I don't think, to me, like, a philosophy I was like, nothing. There's nothing new under the sun. Like, it might be dressed up differently. There might be different tools involved, but essentially humans are humans. That's my belief. So like any of the stuff that comes to light is not new, in my opinion. Like, it's always existed. People have always done it. It might look a little bit different. It might be dressed a little bit differently, but like the motivations that lead to it are not new. So the actions are not new. So like that to me is kind of like a belief I have. So then the question just comes down to, like, it's moral integrity, right? Like, what will you do to be, to know the right people, and you're like, quote unquote, the right people, to get, the right role in the film, or to get connected to the right people, or, to get connected to that producer. What are you willing to do to, like,
yeah,
get under their wing, um, get into the party. Like, and then there's people that are always going to feed on that, like vampires, like literally psychic vampires that are feeding off of that.
yeah. That's why I think that's what was happening from all the investigation and research I've done. That's what's happening at the P Diddy parties. There's they're providing a platform where all these musicians, it's mostly musicians, but it's other famous people as well, other rich people, where they can satisfy all their like inner fetishes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And
So
again, like, I
that's
don't,
what a P Diddy party is. You come to the
I,
P Diddy party and you can satisfy what you the shit that you don't want to talk about or tell people. You can do it here.
yeah, I mean, it's hedonism, right? It's kind
Yeah,
of like unfretted, well, not the fretted. That's not the right word. What is that word? But it's like, yeah,
unbridled, I would say.
unbridled,
Yeah.
there's no restraint
Unbridled. Yeah,
on
yeah,
your, like, moral dark,
yeah.
your dark urges, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's the thing, like, dude, I think everyone has those dark urges. It's just that more often than not, you're not put into situations, like, in my view, like, thank God, where those desires and urges can be tested, right? Because I think many people will maybe crumble. It's like, the thing is, like, someone says, like, I'll never cheat on my wife, or, for example, or I'll never cheat on my husband. Well, how often are you put into a situation where, let's say, like, a supermodel, knocks on your door at the middle of the night and says, like, I'd love to sleep with you, right? Like, you don't know until you're put in those situations where you can actually be tested. I don't know, what was the point I'm making? I'm just like talking shit at this point.
No, I kind of get what you're
Anyway,
saying.
go.
It's allowing you to satisfy these urges, which, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to say this as someone who's gotten more spiritual and more religious since the beginning of this show. You find that, I'm not going to say abhorrent, but you find it that there's a line that you cross, and once you cross that line, it gets a little dodgy. Now, my question to you is, do you think there's a way back from that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so, like, I'm a Christian, like, let's just call it what it is. And, like, I would say during the last 5 years, I've kind of reconnected to that, like, where it's, uh, to me, it's played out to be, in my mind, like, a truthful path. I would say that there's never, that's why we talked about suicide. If we had a suicide episode, and I
Yeah.
think I made the point in the suicide episode that, like, the, and really murder, and why, like, like, in Christianity in particular, like, why murder is so abhorrent, right? It's because you're taking away someone's future. Like, you're taking away their possibilities, and, like, suicide is so bad in a sense because, like, you're taking away your own possibilities. And, like, with us, I think, as human beings, like, we, from our perspective and vantage point, and even from your perspective, like talking about like the universe and whatnot, like we can only see so much, right? You know, if you're standing in one place and you do a 360, there's only so far you can see, right? There's houses blocking your path, there's trees, right? You know what I mean? You don't know where your path is going to go, and like things can change so drastically. Like you could be on the top of the world on Monday and at the bottom on Friday, and vice versa. So like that to me is why when we talked about the suicide episode, it's like it's so tragic because you're in a moment in time where you don't see an out because of your perspective and your circumstances. But like life can change so drastically for the better and for the worse. So yeah, I think to tie that in is like, dude, I think people can change. I think it's hard to change. Like if you do something that is reprehensible to you, it is hard to come to terms with that and to like, to use a more religious term, like repent of it and try to like right that ship. It's almost sometimes easier just to keep going in that direction than to try to like really change. But I do think, and I would imagine with just to use P Diddy because it's in pop, it's like in the culture right now. There are people who probably did things that they now regret, right, and never went back. Like I would imagine, I would imagine that has happened, and then you have people who continue to go from one, you know, I mean, every time they happen, you know, they continue down that road. So yeah, I do think people can change. Like I think there's consequences for your actions. Like if you did something heinous and then you didn't get caught and then 10 years later you're a different person, well, like if that thing comes to light, you're going to reap the whirlwind of that decision. That doesn't mean that like you have changed, but you still, there's consequences for your choices. I don't know
Yeah,
if that answers the
exactly.
question.
I think it does. Accountability is the key.
Dude, if
So
you hurt someone and then like for whatever reason it you know, you find out 10 years later you're 100%. It's like if you did something, you were a drug addict and you did something horrible while you were under the influence of drugs, and then 10 years later you're not that person. You somehow, like, through whatever power you want to call it, have become a different person and broke that chain of events. But you still did something, and like, you know what I mean, you might have to come to terms with that. You're a different person, yeah, but that doesn't kind of change the fact that like you did do something. There's consequences, and that's
lady,
why I think it's hard to change, right? Because it's like you're saying, you know what I mean, like that, dude. It takes a grown up to be like, you know what, I don't, I made that mistake, and like I own up to it. Think about it. In our day and age, how often do you hear an adult, someone in power, admit that they did something wrong and try to fix it? It's like it's unheard of. Like how often have you heard a politician be like, I did something
that's
wrong,
what I'm
I made a
saying.
mistake,
Accountability is gone.
and
It's
like, you know
done.
what I mean, like I'm, you know, I wish I didn't make that choice, but I did, and like I have to deal with the consequences. It's a tough thing. Like most people are unwilling to do it, but again, that's like the ego maybe, or fear of like, kind of like brings back to your 2 points earlier, ego, and also the fear of what people might think, and that trumps you doing the right thing. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, ladies and gentlemen, he's born again. Christopher Corvo has risen. I don't mean to belittle.
No,
Everyone knows
no,
my feelings on religion. I think
no, no.
that's not for me. But I
Yeah,
do like the spirituality part
but you
of
do
it.
have a real. I mean, you do
I
have.
do.
You
I
just
do.
don't
I
want to
kind of
call. You
do.
just don't call it religion.
I'm
Like we
interested
talked
to.
about the other day. You
Yeah,
described the universe, and I was like, you're
that's you to
describing
have
God.
God. Yeah. So
I'm not naming what God it is, but you just described God as every person throughout all time has
yeah,
described
drive
them.
God. Yeah, no, I do think one day we need to sit down over a meal and discuss,
I'd
like,
be down. I'd be
like,
down.
because I think we might be more on the same page than I think we are.
I think
I think,
we
yeah,
probably are.
yeah.
I think it comes down to a lot of the stuff is like semantics, where it's like people get kind of lost in the weeds of like the words you use to describe something. It's almost like you guys say, "Well, define it." Oh, okay, I call it this, but yeah, I agree. But again, let's change the subject then slightly, because I do think we'll both agree on this. Like Like, do you believe in like darkness?
They look evil, basically.
Yeah, let's think of like let's use True Detective as kind of like,
Demonry.
or just like evil, like, you know what I mean, like in those environment. Like, have you ever been in an environment where you just got like, something not right about this? Like, maybe you were in a part of New York, maybe you were around certain types of people, and you're just like, there's something not right here. I need to get out of this
It's
place.
interesting. So as a New Yorker, when I walk around New York now, I do have, I guess you would call it a sixth sense. I do have the sense of when things can go left at any point. Um, so that is a good quality to have, and anyone who's grown up in a major city, even around the world, one of the good characteristics that's forged is you develop this, and people like Corvo, and not just native New Yorkers, people that have spent significant time in New York, you know what I'm saying, where they develop this sense where it's like this things can this can change on a dime at any point. I got to be on my toes here.
Hmm.
So yes, I do believe, as someone that is interested in the paranormal and the other
Yes,
side,
ancient. Yes.
yeah, the other side, basically, that's what I like to call it, the other side. There's
It's called like the unseen world.
correct, yeah, there's certain feelings you get when you're in certain places. I'll tell a story.
Go ahead.
So there's when during the pandemic, the lockdown, when we were first doing the episodes. Um, so this was like I would say it was like spring, so it was early pandemic where everyone was still in a like a madness. They didn't know. Everyone was berserk. They didn't know what the hell was going on. I was walking in Florida, in Miami. There was a tarot card place that shut down because of the pandemic. But as soon as I walked by it, I got like a mystical feeling. That's the great word to use for it.
Hmm.
I felt a feeling of mysticism, and I was just going for a walk. It was the sun was setting. It was early evening, and I said, why am I feeling this right now? At that time I would walk by that place almost every other day when you go for, because there was nothing to do but just walk outside.
Hmm.
Everything was closed. And then another night, this was at nighttime now, so probably a couple days later, or a week or so. I don't remember exactly, but recent, like close together. I walked by that, and I told, shout out Darius Ramos, we got to get this guy back on. I told him the story, and he was like, you should go inside there, just. And I was like, I don't know, man, it's close, but whatever. uh, I walked by that same place. It's like a what's the word I'm looking for, like it's like a, not a tarot reading, yeah, like a reading,
Like a
like a
fortune
palm
teller.
fort, that's the word I was looking for,
Yeah.
fortune teller. And I walked by that same place, same exact spot that I had that sensation a couple of days earlier. And there was a woman that was walking from the opposite direction towards me. And she said, I know you. And I go, what? I've never seen this woman. I didn't recognize her in any way. And
Hmm.
she goes, I know you. You helped me. You gave me a ride the other day, and it really helped me out. Gave you a ride. I don't even drive. I was like, what are you talking about? But in my head, I was like, what if Robert Avery, in, like you said, like the unseen world, the other dimension, the other side, what if I have some kind of a connection there where I did help this woman who was in need, and she was like, I really appreciate it, thank you. And the craziest part, Chris, is I didn't feel um there was no fear at all. I wasn't frightened
Hmm.
in any way. I actually felt happiness while I was talking to her. She just stopped me and she was like, I know you helped me. And I was like, what the hell? She could have just legitimately been crazy. Fair enough. But I don't think so. Not the way I felt walking through that place. So what do you think that is? Like that's for coming from my perspective,
Yeah.
maybe there is something bigger than maybe religion, not religion as an organized entity,
Well,
but
put it.
spirituality as a
I mean,
thing.
put it this way: like every culture has believed, from my understanding, that there's the seen world and the unseen world,
That was crazy. Yeah.
right? Like I think that's like I'm not speaking out of school. Like I think that's every culture. Every culture. There's very few cultures of like antiquity that I mean to say that there were gods and demons or they would be like, yeah, we agree. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you would never have to like convince someone, like, oh yeah, like yeah, there's definitely things that like they understood that. Now, two interpretations. One, like modern people would be like, oh, those ancient people were dumb. We're the wise ones. We know what's up. We have science. That's probably our ego because those people were not dumb either. Um, so like, yeah, I think there's definitely the unseen world. I mean, it goes back to my question of like the darkness. Like I would imagine, you would go into like a P Diddy party and maybe the front of it is like, harmless, but then as you start to go through the house and there's closed doors and you hear sounds and maybe a door is half open and you see some things that like you're going to get the feeling of like lack of a better word like evil, like there's something going on here that's just it's not right, like it has a feeling.
Yeah, no, I do believe in that actually. Yeah.
Now you could call that, I guess different people have different descriptions. That's your instinct, whatever that means, right? People use the word instinct. What does instinct mean? um I don't know. I don't think it's scientifically determined what an instinct is or where instincts exist within the body. I don't know. Like, but human beings definitely feel things. Like, and how often or how many stories can you find where someone felt a way and they left a place and then something bad happened in that place, right? Like, I think we definitely feel things, and maybe we're feeling events taking place in the unseen world. Like things are going down there. We can't see them, but we can feel them and we respond to them. And sometimes we respond in the sense of like, that doesn't feel good. I'm getting out. And because maybe you're like that, you know what I mean? You're of the light, you're on the side of the angels, for lack of a better
Yeah.
word. And you're like, this is not a good place. And maybe you're calibrated in a different way or you're vibrating at a different frequency and that world attracts you, right? And
Mm.
you lean into the darkness. Right, and we're using these words like I'm not going to give you definition like use, but these are kind of words humans have always used, right? um, to
Yeah,
describe
language is
things,
so important. There's so much in language, just the word
right?
itself.
But I
Yeah.
think every culture has,
Yeah,
there's
you're right.
there's good and there's bad, there's evil and there's dark. Now they might differ different on their definition of those things to a degree, um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that's true. To me, it's so interesting, like with the whole thing going on with P Diddy, is like if like what they're saying is true,
It's probably true, Chris. This is probably true.
if what they're saying is true, and like take it to the, because again, like the internet, we've talked about this, is just so wild. People can say whatever they want, but let's just say it's like, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's like an 8 as far as truth value. So like all the crazy stories, it's like an 8. There's some that are not real, but a good chunk of them are real. Again, it's like, dude, there's people, again, I'll say like psychic vampires, right? There are people who, given, there's a good quote. It's something like, give a person a lot of money and like you kind of will find out who they are, right? Like some people given a lot of money do great things, and some people given a lot of money do a lot of horrible things, right? Like in some
Hmm.
cases it's an enabler, right? It's like if you're calibrated to do evil, then give someone power and wealth, their evil is going to magnify. If you're calibrated to do what's right and give them a lot of power and a lot of wealth, it's like who knows what amazing things that they can accomplish and do to help other people.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's a liaison dangereux. It's a cruel intention. There's
oh, very
remember that movie where
yeah,
the rich students are just fucking with all like the middle class and poorer
yeah,
students. There's an Always Sunny episode about that too, which is hilarious. Where
yeah.
on a lighter note, where one of the characters, Dennis, um, he says, they're not these rich people. They're not the only one who knows how to play these games." And he manipulates a game of his own to like fuck with the richer people.
Because he's a sociopath.
Yeah, but
That's
he's the sociopath character. Yeah, yeah.
um, yeah. The episode where they do the montage where you find out that he's just like
He's
they're
a
like he's a
serial
serial
killer.
killer.
Yeah,
It's funny.
yeah.
But yeah, man, it's like, dude, again, just like as we come up on an hour, just to kind of round it all off, like, yeah, I don't think there's anything new under the sun, man. I think it's like, I would imagine in ancient Rome, you would find very similar parties.
Oh,
Um,
definitely. Hell yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's not new. The biggest thing that's new is just that, like, and maybe it's a net, as much as you say like social media is bad and all the things are bad, it's like one of the net positives is that the peasants, which, to a degree, we're all peasants. You know what I mean? It's like everyone's got a camera. It's hard to keep your that darkness completely hidden forever. It will come to the light, right? The cream will rise.
The truth always will come out. The light
And
always wins. You're right.
yeah, and it's like, dude, it just takes, maybe sometimes it takes a lot of
It takes a
time.
long time.
But
Correct.
that's like the positive of now. It's like, dude, everyone's got a phone, everyone's got a camera, everyone's has a recorder. Like, those who seek to do, I'm gonna call it what, like, evil, or to take advantage, or that is like, it's like, dude, it's headhunting season, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you don't live in a vacuum anymore. You're not on your private island, guarded by soldiers and doing whatever craziness you want to do. If you're doing it in, like, America, like in places that are not secluded, like, it's gonna come out. It's gonna come to the light, and I think it's kind of a net positive.
Yeah. So the less I I think that's why that line at True Detective resonates with me. If anyone that's
It's great.
the fans have told me. We have fans. We go a little bit. It's a couple, but we got fans, and they've told me that's their favorite episode. Both that one, the True Detective one. So, but yeah, that's a good idea because I believe if we're gonna go like pull the curtain back a little bit, we had to re-record that episode because of technical issues. Am I correct?
I
I
think
think
so,
so. Yeah,
and I think it was like the second episode, it actually came out
yeah.
better because we kind of
It
already
was
talked about
better.
a lot of the
Yeah,
details.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah, I mean, for those, again, that's a good episode. But yeah, I mean, the great Woody Harrelson and Matthew McConaughey, right? They're sitting down and not sitting, but they're looking at the sky, and it's like very poignant, right? It's like you could interpret the night sky in two different ways. In one case, it's like a few dots of light being overtaken by this, void of black darkness. Or you could say, when Matthew McConaughey says, at one point the sky was all dark,
yeah.
and then the pinpricks of light started to appear and slowly increased in number, fighting back the darkness.
Yeah, it's a great scene, and I love that that's the last line. They know what they're doing. It's well done by the create. What's his name? Nick Pizzolatto.
Yeah,
Well done.
I mean, and again, I think that's kind of like why it's hard to watch other things nowadays. And it's like you look back to that season, not even the show, the series, that season.
Yeah,
Periodically, I think there's someone taps into something, and it's like,
yeah. And it always pops up in like in pop culture a little bit. You'll see someone in the media or online mention that season. It's always like it's always there. That's how good that season
yeah,
was. It came out 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, and
over 10
it's
years
and
ago.
it's still around. But my last question, and then we'll wind it down. So speaking of the P Diddy stuff, there is a question that I have after doing my own research and listening and reading a lot of consuming a lot of content. Do you think when you talked about the truth will always come out, do you think this is more of a earthly thing or an otherworldly thing? Is it? I wouldn't say it's God because the word is smite. God is smiting people, yeah. But it's. Do you think this is more of like a spiritual comeuppance, or it's more being shut down by like wealthy elites around the globe? Because I think it's the latter. It's a
I
hard
don't
question.
know.
Does
Yeah, no,
yeah
I'm trying to see if I can find a good quote.
yeah. Yeah, so while he's looking that up, in my opinion, I don't think it's. A lot of people are saying it's a like what you're saying with the darkness and the evil eventually will get vanquished, and there's a lot of traction that I'm seeing where people are agreeing with P Diddy, all the people that he's associated with, because there's other people that have been deleting all their histories. I told you this. There's a lot of other famous musicians that have been erasing their entire internet history, and so you can't. I'll call them out right now. Usher, look at Usher's
Yeah, I heard about that.
social media now. Every single platform is erased. So, do you
Yeah,
think? Do you
I have
think
an
it's?
answer.
All right, go ahead.
I mean, I have my opinion. There's a lot of. I mean, again, so I know
Or
I'm
is
just
it
gonna.
both? Or is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were talking about this a little bit briefly before, and like, yeah, I mean, are the two mutually exclusive? I think there is definitely like in a lot of let's speak Christianity, for example, like, and probably a lot of other beliefs is like the truth will arise, right? Like you can only hide so long. But do I think that this is like a Sodom Gomorrah scenario where like, no, I don't necessarily think it. I mean, it could be in that sense. Like, workers of evil eventually get found out. So I mean, it's hard to say. I don't know. I don't like have like a strong opinion where you could say, oh, like that person you were talking about. I think you said he was like a Christian. I mean, it's
Mhm.
like again, it's the thing is that I don't think so. Yeah, let me actually go back and give you a better answer. So your point was like you're on more of the side that like
It's being suppressed by the wealthy
yeah.
class. Yeah.
So again, I think when it comes to wealth, like there's wealth and there's wealth. I like again like 50 millionaire, 200 millionaire, 300 millionaire, 400 millionaire. In the grand scheme of things, are not that wealthy. What is P Diddy worth?
It's probably like I would say like half a billion, like 500 million. That would be my guess. High, very high. But it's like you said, not as high as you would think. There's a lot of other money out there.
Yeah, since I've seen like 600 million, but like
Yeah.
it's a lot. I mean, more money than I got, obviously. But like, if you're a multi-billionaire, like, and you want to, you know, dance with the devil, for lack of a better expression, or give in to some like dark seated desires. Like, I would imagine there's many unknown people in the world that will act as a go-between for those desires, right? Like, let's just be honest, right? Like,
Like
for every desire and fetish under the sun, and like go from like the vanilla to the dark side,
yeah,
like just let your imagination run. There is a marketplace for that appetite,
correct. Yeah.
and that person is not like also in the public eye. You know what I mean? Like, if you're worth billions of dollars and you have a taste for some evil stuff, you're not gonna. I don't think you're going to P Diddy, and you're gonna do that in a environment where many people can see you, right? Like, I think you're going to like some like person who no one knows about, who satisfies that in some country or some island somewhere. You know what I mean? So like, I don't really
Yeah,
believe
like
this dark
fixers. Yeah.
conspiracy theory, because I think these people are like famous people have a lot of power, but they also have a lot of weakness because your power is your weakness, right? Because you're
Bingo.
all about reputation, right? It's like see me, see me, see me. The dangerous people are the ones that you don't know about and they don't care about their fame because it's like their power is not connected to like popularity. So like
Right.
those types of people, I think that they're also satisfying those dark desires if they have them, and there are marketplaces for that satisfaction that we don't know about.
Yeah.
So that's my thinking. Like, who's P Diddy? But again, I would imagine that's more of like, let me get a bunch of people in one place who are all revved up and riled up. Let me also feed them drinks that might like also
Be
lower
laced. There's
lower inhibitions
also laced with
and
things. Yeah.
like let nature take its course and like create avenues where they can kind of like give in, because I mean I think it's not I'm not speaking out of school. Like people under the influence might do a thing that in their right mind, even if they had that desire to do, they would restrain themselves. So if you create an atmosphere where like inhibitions are lowered and then you throw in the temptations, like things are gonna happen. I think it's more like blackmail, right? Like let things happen and just kind of keep an eye on it, and like, all right, down the road when I need some of this evidence, I'll bring it up. But
Yeah.
again, it's like low hanging fruit, right? Like I want to get you to sing in this album, I want to do this deal, right? It's like big money, but kind of not big. Does that make sense? Like
Y-
these are not like
yeah.
these
I
are not
get.
like leaders of countries.
No. They're actually small players in the game. I would say
Yeah, I guess that's what I put. It's still, I mean, from the grand scheme of evil, it's still
it's
darkness.
still
It's
bad.
just like
That's yeah. I would agree.
people thinking that, oh, he's like the fixer for like the Illuminati. It's like, dude, these like they're not like it's not in the same.
He probably has
They're not
no identity at all.
correct.
He has
They're
no
they're
profile.
not in the same world,
Yeah,
right? That
yeah. No, that's a good point. These, but I think the best point you made, and then I'll comment. I disagree with a little bit of it, but
yeah, go ahead, that's fine.
the best point you made was P Diddy looks like he was doing this just because he genuinely was like he liked doing this. So he was hosting these parties in an effort to not only engage, like satisfy his own, like satiate himself, but also to have influence over people where he had evidence, because there's the other part of the P. Diddy story that's going to come out soon that's trickling out is other people were involved recording everything that was happening. So every time you were on his yacht or in his mansion at a party, the freak offs, that's what they were called. They were literally called the freak offs. You were being recorded audio and video footage the whole time.
Yeah,
So it's definitely a blackmail thing. But what I will disagree with is when you engage in that, anyone in that, I don't think you mentioned this, but anyone in that circle, in that musical, because P. Diddy's more music industry in Hollywood. That's
hmm
really what he is. He's not in, like you said, he's not in with the major billionaires. He's not in the Saudi Arabia, the Middle East, the like the big players with that have $60 billion firms. He's not that level. But what he failed to realize is there was people that were at that party where he could be the fall guy. Am I explaining that correctly? Like, he's the face, he's the jester that's out there for them,
yeah. I
the
mean,
bigger for the bigger money.
someone put this out there, and I mean, we can kind of cap off of this. Is
Yeah,
like, is he the head of the snake,
I
the
don't
tip
think
of the
so.
spear?
Definitely not.
or is he? Are there people above him, and there's just people like he's the fall guy?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's like this is kind of a rabbit hole you can go
Yeah,
deep
I know
down
that
into,
it sounds.
and sometimes we kind of like give people more uh, mastermind intelligence than is necessary. It's like at the end of the day, like people have always liked to indulge in like
No,
hedonism,
yeah, yeah.
and if you just all you do is create a environment where that's acceptable and people feel safe, or like again, like because they're doing like you know
Everything they're doing.
their inhibitions are lowered. It's kind of like you know it's kind of almost a natural evolution that might happen. And then there's like X number, there's thousands of different ways you could take advantage of it.
Yeah, but that's where I was trying to say that you clarified it better. I would take it a step further. I would say those parties were specifically designed to do that. It's not that someone stumbled upon it and said, "Hey, oh, I've done X amount of substances. I've drank X amount of this, and ooh, this is something that I've always liked doing. Let me try it here." This was specifically tailored. It was designed.
Oh
You
yeah,
see what I'm saying?
I
Yeah.
know, and I think that's like at this point kind of beyond like 100%. Like yeah, I mean based on the stuff they found in his homes, like yeah, no, they were sex parties.
Yeah, it was cool.
Like
But
there's
not.
it didn't it
It's not
wasn't
an
like
orgy. It's not. This is not eyes wide shut. This is
I mean
beyond.
yeah, I don't know like yeah, but no, that was he threw a theme party and that was the theme, like that was the intent, and it was designed in a way that would be what happened. So like no 100% again. Yeah, I mean, and the people going to them also knew that
They
was what
knew
they were
this,
going to do.
correct? That's why I
So
don't absolve any of them.
I think it'll be very interesting to see what unfolds, because I'm not saying that like how to put it, it's the people who went to that knew that they were going for that purpose, or they were going to be around that. Probably not very different than when they went to Hugh Hefner's
The Playboy Mansion.
Playboy Mansion. I've heard that that's also a lot of what happened. It does sound like the main difference is that like you said, part of the intent was to gather blackmail.
Yeah, it's like a covert intelligence
So
operation.
more nefarious in
Yeah.
in that respect. And again, you can go down the rabbit hole of people online. Oh, this is a CIA front or whatever.
Yeah, I'm not going to go that far, but
again, it's
yeah.
just like people. Knowledge is power, and like leverage is always useful. So yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting just to see how people respond.
You think this is
Like-
going to go to trial? Will this ever come out?
I don't know. Who knows?
I don't think so.
I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, again, I said this somewhere at one point, and then we'll finish. Is like, I think a lot of times we think people have a lot more power than they really do have.
I agree with
Like,
that. Yeah.
I think there's people who have power, and there's a lot of the people we don't really know they exist. And then there's people who like have a lot of money, but like at the end of the day, like Elon Musk is the richest. Well, theoretically, he's the richest person in the world. Like Putin is probably richer than he is, but like the government can still arrest him and put him in jail and take away everything he has. So it's like that can happen. Like it's the government has weapons and can do that. So like it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think a lot of these people what'll be interesting to see is like how people who went to those things respond, because let's say as more of the stuff comes out as to what events were taking place there, there's going to be financial ramifications.
I think that's the most interesting part.
Like
correct.
if you find out that like Leonardo DiCaprio used to go to those parties. Leonardo DiCaprio dates a 19-year-old. He's like nearly 50, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're going to see some things that come out, like predilections people might have, and like that there's going to be like a financial ramification, right? Because if you're still making movies or still making music or releasing albums or going on tour, that might definitely influence how like people see you, and they might not buy your ticket. So it'll be interesting to see how people like try to navigate that,
and what lengths will these people go to make sure that doesn't come out.
I
It's
mean,
it's the
dude,
other side.
exactly. I don't know. So I don't know, man. It'll be interesting. But
Yeah.
yeah, man. This is this was kind of a wandering episode.
No,
Thank you
this is
guys
a good one. This is a good one.
for tuning in as you listen to us try to break down the latest that's going on in the news and the P Diddy scandal. It is crazy though.
It's a wild story. It is. It's unbelievable. But
stay tuned for the next episode.
Yep.
We'll try to hit one back next week. But have a great weekend and talk to you soon.
yeah, peace.